Mother Bear, crying at the doorstep of this home. What this man did put everyone in tears. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The sun dipped below the tree line as Noah Parker finished stacking firewood on his cabin porch. Living on the edge of Whispering Pines Forest meant preparing for the autumn chill that crept earlier each year. His small cabin, weathered by years of mountain seasons, stood as a peaceful outpost between wilderness and civilization. Noah wiped sweat from his brow, his calloused hands bearing witness to years of self-reliance. At 43, his beard now carried streaks of silver, but his eyes remained bright and observant. He had moved to these woods 5 years ago after losing his wife Claire to cancer, seeking solace in nature's steady rhythms. As twilight settled across the landscape, Noah heard something unusual, a low, mournful sound carried on the evening breeze. He paused, head tilted, listening. The sound came again, more desperate this time. Not quite a growl, not quite a whimper, but something that raised the hair on the back of his neck. Whatever made that sound was in pain. Reaching for his flashlight, Noah stepped cautiously off his porch. The sound grew louder as he approached the tree line, and then he froze. In the fading light, a massive shape emerged from the shadows. A brown bear, her coat catching the last golden rays of sunlight. Noah's heart hammered against his ribs as he took a careful step backward. The bear didn't charge. Instead, she paced anxiously, letting out that same sorrowful cry that had drawn Noah outside. Something was wrong. The bear's eyes, dark and glistening, didn't hold aggression, but something Noah recognized instantly. Desperation. "Easy there," Noah whispered, though he knew the words meant nothing to the wild animal. He scanned the scene, trying to understand. That's when he noticed the bear was alone. No cubs followed in her wake, yet her swollen teats suggested she was nursing. A mother separated from her young. The bear approached Noah's fence line, then backed away, moving toward the trees before returning to the same spot. She repeated this motion, crying out each time she faced the forest. Noah had lived alongside wildlife long enough to know this wasn't normal behavior. The bear wasn't threatening him. She was trying to communicate. "You want me to follow you?" Noah murmured, hardly believing what he was considering. As if in response, the bear moved toward the forest once more, looking back at Noah with what could only be described as expectation. The logical part of Noah's mind screamed warnings. Following a wild bear into darkening woods defied every safety rule he knew. Yet something deeper, something that recognized suffering across species, urged him forward. Noah's neighbor, Eleanor Winters, stepped onto her porch across the road, her voice cutting through the evening air. "Noah Parker, get back inside before that thing mauls you." Eleanor was 72, sharp-tongued and fiercely protective of the handful of residents who lived along this remote stretch. She reached for her phone, no doubt ready to call the local ranger station. "It's okay, Eleanor," Noah called back, never taking his eyes off the bear. "Something's wrong. Her cub might be in trouble." "And how exactly is that your problem?" Eleanor countered, but Noah could hear the worry beneath her protest. The bear let out another cry, more urgent this time, and started into the forest, looking back once more at Noah. Making a decision that defied all logic, he grabbed his emergency backpack from beside the door, containing a first aid kit, rope, flashlight, and water, and headed toward the tree line. "Noah!" Eleanor shouted. "Don't you dare!" "Call Ranger Miller," Noah yelled back. "Tell him to head this way, but don't let him bring a gun. This isn't what it seems." The forest swallowed Noah, the bear moving ahead of him, occasionally stopping to ensure he followed. Pine needles crunched beneath his boots as daylight faded, replaced by deepening blue shadows. The flashlight beam cut through the growing darkness, revealing glimpses of the bear's powerful form ahead. Noah's heart pounded as he ventured deeper into the woods, following an anxious mother bear into the gathering darkness. Guided only by instinct and the inexplicable certainty that something extraordinary was unfolding, something that would forever change his understanding of the wild creatures with whom he shared these mountains. The forest grew denser as they moved away from the cabin, the familiar trails giving way to untamed undergrowth. Branches snagged at Noah's jacket, and twice he nearly lost his footing on the uneven ground. Still, the bear moved with purpose, her massive form somehow graceful despite her obvious distress. She would pause every few yards, looking back at Noah with those intelligent eyes, waiting until he caught up before continuing. "I'm coming," Noah whispered, his voice barely audible even to himself. "Show me where to go." 20 minutes into their strange journey, the bear suddenly stopped. Her ears perked forward. Noah halted, listening. At first, he heard nothing beyond his own labored breathing and the soft rustle of leaves overhead. Then it came, a faint, pitiful whimper that couldn't possibly have come from an adult bear. The mother bear let out a responding rumble, and the crying grew more frantic. Noah swept his flashlight beam across the area, but saw nothing unusual until the bear moved to a steep embankment, partially hidden by a thicket of blackberry bushes. She pawed at the ground, whining softly. Noah approached cautiously, directing his light where she indicated. "Oh, God," he whispered. There, at the bottom of a narrow 8-foot ravine, a small bear cub lay trapped, its hind leg caught beneath a fallen tree limb. The cub couldn't have been more than 4 months old, its fur still carrying the soft fluffiness of youth. It cried out again at the sight of its mother, struggling feebly against the weight pinning it down. The mother bear paced along the edge of the ravine, clearly agitated but unable to reach her cub without risking a dangerous fall herself. Noah understood now why she had sought human help. The situation required hands and tools that she didn't possess. "I see him," Noah told the mother bear, speaking in the same gentle tone he'd used to calm a frightened horse. "I'm going to help, but you have to let me work." The ravine was steep but navigable. Noah carefully picked his way down, sliding the last few feet and landing with a soft thud near the trapped cub. The little creature recoiled in fear, baring tiny teeth and letting out a sound that might have been threatening from a larger bear, but from this infant seemed only heartbreaking. "Easy, little one," Noah coaxed. "I know you're scared." Above, the mother bear watched intently, a low rumble emanating from her throat. Not quite threatening, but a clear reminder of her presence. Noah worked quickly, examining how the branch had pinned the cub's leg. The limb was heavy, perhaps 4 inches in diameter and 6 feet long. The cub had likely been playing or foraging when the dead branch broke from a tree above. Noah braced himself and lifted, muscles straining against the weight. The branch moved slightly but not enough. The cub cried out as the pressure shifted, causing Noah to immediately stop. "I need leverage," he muttered, looking around. Finding a sturdy piece of deadwood nearby, he wedged it under the branch and pushed down with all his weight. The branch lifted just enough for the cub to scramble free, dragging its injured hind leg. Before Noah could assess the damage, the cub had clambered partway up the ravine despite its injury, desperate to reach its mother. The mother bear made a soft chuffing sound that seemed to calm the little one immediately. Noah watched their reunion from the bottom of the ravine, his flashlight illuminating the tender scene. The mother bear gently nuzzled her cub, sniffing thoroughly for injuries. The cub pressed against her, trembling but safe. The beauty of the moment nearly made Noah forget his own situation, alone in the dark woods with two wild bears. As if sensing his thoughts, the mother bear turned her attention back to him, watching as he began to climb out of the ravine. The ascent proved trickier than the descent. Halfway up, Noah's foot slipped on loose soil, sending him sliding back to the bottom. Pain shot through his ankle as he landed awkwardly. He bit back a curse, testing his weight gingerly. Not broken, but definitely sprained. "Great," he muttered. "Just great." To his astonishment, the mother bear was now peering down at him from the ravine's edge, the cub hidden safely behind her. She made a low sound in her throat, different from her earlier distress calls. Noah couldn't interpret it, but something in her posture suggested she wasn't about to abandon him. "I'll be fine," Noah told her, as if she could understand. "You've got your little one. Go on home now." But climbing out with his injured ankle proved challenging. Each attempt sent pain shooting up his leg, forcing him to rest. The temperature was dropping rapidly as night fully claimed the forest. If he couldn't get out soon, hypothermia would become a real concern. After his third failed attempt, Noah slumped against the ravine wall, breathing heavily. The mother bear had not left. Instead, she paced along the edge, occasionally disappearing from view only to return moments later. Her behavior was so unusual that Noah began to wonder if he was hallucinating from pain or exhaustion. Suddenly, he heard voices in the distance, human voices, and the beam of flashlights cutting through the trees. "Noah, where are you?" a deep voice called out. It was Ranger Miller. "Here," Noah shouted back, "in a ravine. I've got a sprained ankle." The voices grew closer, and Noah realized with horror that the mother bear and her cub were now in danger. Armed rangers approaching a bear with her young in the dark was a recipe for disaster. "Wait," he shouted. "There's a mother bear and cub. Don't shoot, they're not aggressive." The voices paused, conferring among themselves. Then Ranger Miller's voice came again. "Noah, can you see the bears now? Are they near you?" Noah looked up. To his amazement, the mother bear and her cub had vanished silently into the forest, leaving no sign they were ever there. "They were here," Noah called back, "but they've gone. The cub was trapped, and she came to get help." Minutes later, two rangers reached the edge of the ravine, their powerful flashlights revealing Noah's predicament. Ranger Miller, a burly man with 20 years of experience in these woods, looked skeptical as he and his younger colleague helped Noah out with a rope. "You're saying a mother bear led you here to rescue her cub?" Miller asked, his tone making clear his disbelief. "And then what?" She said, "Thank you," and walked away. Noah winced as they helped him onto level ground. "I know how it sounds, but Eleanor saw her too. The bear was at my door, crying out. She kept going back and forth to the forest until I followed." The younger ranger, whose name tag read Rivera, looked around nervously. "Bears don't do that, sir. They don't seek human help." "This one did," Noah insisted, leaning heavily on Miller's shoulder as they began the slow journey back to the cabins. Miller sighed. "We've had reports of a mother with cubs in this area. Probably the same one. You're lucky you weren't mauled, Noah. What were you thinking? Following a wild bear into the woods at dusk?" Noah didn't answer immediately. How could he explain the look in the bear's eyes, the clear intelligence and desperation he'd seen there? How could he describe the way she'd waited for him, making sure he followed? They wouldn't believe him without seeing it themselves. "I can show you where the cub was trapped," he said instead. "There'll be evidence." "Tomorrow, maybe," Miller replied. Right now, we need to get that ankle looked at. Eleanor's called half the county in a panic about you." As they emerged from the tree line near Noah's cabin, he saw several vehicles parked along the dirt road. Eleanor's old pickup, the ranger's Jeep, and to his surprise, a small news van with the logo of the local station, KPNW. Eleanor rushed forward as they approached, her lined face tight with worry. "Noah Parker, you fool. I thought that bear had made a meal of you." Despite her harsh words, she helped the rangers ease him onto his porch steps. A young woman with a camera approached, followed by a man holding a microphone with the KPNW logo. "Mr. Parker, Kelly Zhang, KPNW News. Your neighbor called us about a man who followed a bear into the forest. Can you tell us what happened?" Miller stepped between them. "Now's not the time. This man needs medical attention." "It's okay," Noah said, wincing as Eleanor examined his swollen ankle. "But you wouldn't believe me if I told you." The reporter's eyes lit up at the challenge. "Try me." So Noah told them about the bear's cries, her purposeful behavior, leading him to her trapped cub, and even her apparent concern when he couldn't climb out of the ravine. As he spoke, he was aware of the skeptical glances exchanged by the rangers and the barely concealed excitement of the reporter who clearly thought she'd stumbled upon either a madman or the wildlife story of the year. Noah concluded, "The mother bear didn't just stumble across me by chance. She came to my cabin specifically for help. She knew what she was doing." "Bears don't reason like that," Miller interjected. "They don't understand that humans can help them. More likely, she was disoriented or confused by something else entirely." "Then why lead me straight to her cub?" Noah challenged. "Why wait for me to follow? Why not attack when I was vulnerable in that ravine?" Before Miller could respond, a commotion at the tree line drew everyone's attention. Flashlight beams swung toward the sound of breaking branches. "Bear!" someone shouted, and the rangers immediately moved forward, hands on their holstered weapons. Noah struggled to his feet. "Wait, don't shoot!" From the darkness emerged not one bear, but two, the mother and her cub, limping but mobile. They paused at the very edge of the forest, clearly visible in the combined beams of a dozen flashlights. The camera operator from KPNW swung around, capturing the moment. The mother bear stood tall, regarding the gathered humans with what could only be described as deliberate intent. The cub pressed against her legs, frightened by the lights and voices, but protected by its mother's massive form. For a long moment, no one moved or spoke. Then, to the astonishment of everyone present, the mother bear dipped her head toward Noah in what appeared to be a gesture of acknowledgement. She then turned, nudging her cub gently, and together they melted back into the dark forest. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the soft whir of the news camera. Finally, Eleanor spoke, her voice unusually subdued. "Well, I'll be damned." Miller lowered his hand from his weapon, looking thoroughly perplexed. "In 20 years, I've never seen anything like that." The reporter, Kelly Zhang, turned to her camera operator with wide eyes. "Tell me you got that." "Every second," he confirmed, looking as stunned as everyone else. Noah sat back down heavily on the porch steps, a mix of vindication and wonder washing over him. He had been right. The bear had sought him out deliberately, had trusted him somehow. And now, impossibly, she had returned, as if to confirm his story. "Mr. Parker," Kelly said, finding her professional voice again, "would you mind if we interviewed you about what happened tonight? This is unprecedented." Noah looked toward the dark forest where the bears had disappeared. "Sure," he said quietly, "but there's something more important first." "What's that?" Kelly asked. That cub's leg needs attention, Noah said. And we need to find out who set that fallen branch as a trap. It didn't fall naturally. I should have realized it sooner. Someone's targeting bears in these woods. Miller frowned. What makes you say it was a trap? The way it was positioned, Noah explained. Too perfectly placed to be accidental, and there were marks on it, saw marks. Someone cut that branch and positioned it to fall when triggered. The revelation cast a shadow over the miraculous events of the evening. If Noah was right, someone in their peaceful community was secretly attempting to harm the local wildlife, and had nearly succeeded with an innocent cub. As the paramedics arrived to tend to Noah's ankle, he couldn't shake the image of the mother bear's intelligent eyes or her final gesture of acknowledgement. Something extraordinary had happened in those woods tonight. Something that defied conventional understanding of wild animals. And Noah was certain of one thing: this story was far from over. The paramedics helped Noah onto a stretcher, preparing to transport him to the county hospital for x-rays. As they lifted him into the ambulance, Noah caught a glimpse of movement at the forest edge, perhaps just branches swaying in the night breeze, or perhaps a mother bear watching to ensure her unlikely ally was being cared for, just as he had cared for her cub. "Wait," Noah called out, causing the paramedics to pause. "Ranger Miller, you need to check that ravine tomorrow. If someone's setting traps for bears, there might be others." Miller nodded grimly. "First Light will be out there. Don't worry, Noah. We'll get to the bottom of this." As the ambulance doors closed, Noah caught a final glimpse of Eleanor speaking animatedly with the news reporter, no doubt embellishing the story with her own colorful commentary. Despite the pain in his ankle, he smiled. Tonight had changed everything. Not just for him, but perhaps for the entire community's relationship with the wilderness surrounding them. The county hospital buzzed with unusual energy when Noah arrived. Word had somehow spread about the Bear Whisperer, as someone had already dubbed him, and several staff members peeked into his room during the examination. Dr. Patel, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an efficient manner, seemed to be the only one immune to the excitement. "Sprained, not broken," she pronounced after reviewing his x-rays. "You're lucky, Mr. Parker. A night in the woods with bears could have ended much worse." "They weren't trying to hurt me," Noah explained, for what felt like the 100th time. "The mother bear needed help." Dr. Patel smiled diplomatically as she wrapped his ankle. "I've lived in these mountains for 25 years, and I've treated dozens of hikers and campers after bear encounters. None of them would describe bears as seeking human assistance. This was different," Noah insisted. "Perhaps," she conceded, securing the bandage. "Nature always has surprises for us. You'll need to stay off this foot as much as possible for the next 2 weeks. Crutches for the first week, at minimum." As she wrote out his care instructions, a nurse poked her head in. "Dr. Patel, there's a wildlife biologist asking to speak with Mr. Parker. Says it's important." Dr. Patel raised an eyebrow. "Your story travels fast." Moments later, a tall woman with copper-colored hair pulled back in a practical ponytail entered the room. She wore hiking pants and a Department of Fish and Wildlife polo shirt under a light jacket. Her freckled face was serious, but her green eyes held unmistakable excitement. "Mr. Parker, I'm Dr. Olivia Brennan, wildlife biologist with the department. I heard about your experience tonight and drove straight over." She held out her hand, which Noah shook. "I've been studying black bears in this region for 7 years, and I've never heard anything like what witnesses are describing." "You think I'm crazy," Noah said flatly. "Actually, no." Dr. Brennan pulled up a chair. "May I?" At Noah's nod, she sat and leaned forward eagerly. "There are documented cases of interspecies cooperation in the wild. even between predators and prey under certain circumstances. But deliberate help-seeking behavior from bears toward humans? That's unprecedented, at least officially. Officially, Noah caught the qualification in her tone. Dr. Brennan glanced at Dr. Patel, who was finishing her paperwork but clearly listening. There are stories among some of the indigenous communities in this region about bears seeking human intervention, usually for their young. Most scientists dismiss these as folklore or anthropomorphism. She lowered her voice. I've always suspected there might be more to those stories. For the first time since the ordeal began, Noah felt a flicker of validation from someone with scientific credentials. The bear knew exactly what she was doing. She came to my cabin, led me to her cub, and then came back to, thank me, confirm my story. Fascinating, Dr. Brennan murmured. And you mentioned something about a trap. The branch that pinned the cub didn't fall naturally. It had saw marks. Someone cut it and rigged it somehow. Dr. Brennan's expression darkened. Poachers. They've been a growing problem in the region, but they usually use snares or spring traps. This is a new tactic. Why target bears? Noah asked. They're protected, aren't they? Bear gallbladders and paws fetch high prices in certain black markets, Dr. Brennan explained. A single gallbladder can sell for thousands of dollars for use in traditional medicines in some Asian countries, and trophy hunters will pay for bear paw souvenirs. Her disgust was evident. We've been tracking increased poaching activity for months, but it's difficult to catch them in the act. Dr. Patel finished her paperwork and approached. Mr. Parker needs rest now. You can continue this conversation tomorrow. Dr. Brennan stood quickly. Of course. But Mr. Parker, would you be willing to show me exactly where this happened? Once you're mobile, of course, and would you consider letting me interview you for my research? Call me Noah, and yes, I'll help however I can. He hesitated, then added, Do you think the mother bear and her cub will be okay? The cub's leg was injured. Bears are remarkably resilient, Dr. Brennan assured him, but I'm concerned about those poachers. If they're setting traps in that area, then we need to find them, Noah finished her thought, before they hurt any more animals. Dr. Brennan smiled, a determined glint in her eye. Exactly what I was thinking. Get some rest, Noah. I'll be in touch tomorrow. After she left, Dr. Patel helped Noah settle in for the night. You've had quite an adventure, she remarked. You should know your story is already online. The local news posted a clip from tonight. Great, Noah muttered, not entirely comfortable with the attention. My son texted me about it before you even arrived. Dr. Patel's expression softened. He said it made him cry. The idea of a wild mother trusting a human to save her baby. In times like these, people need stories of unexpected connection. After she left, Noah lay awake in the sterile hospital room, replaying the evening's events. The mother bear's intelligent eyes, the trapped cub's whimpers, the realization that someone had deliberately set a deadly trap in his beloved forest. All of it swirled in his mind. 5 years ago, he'd moved to these mountains seeking solitude after losing Claire. Instead, he'd found an unexpected connection with one of nature's most misunderstood creatures. Claire would have loved this story, he thought with a pang of bittersweet memory. She'd always insisted animals understood more than humans gave them credit for. Sleep finally claimed him near dawn, his dreams filled with dark forests and knowing eyes watching from the shadows. Noah awoke to the sound of his hospital room door opening. Morning light streamed through the blinds, and the local news played quietly on the wall-mounted television. A nurse entered with breakfast and a surprisingly thick stack of messages. "You're popular today," she said cheerfully. placing the tray on his bedside table. "These all came in for you this morning, and fair warning, there are reporters in the lobby hoping to talk to you." Noah groaned. "Reporters? Plural?" "The bear man is big news," she confirmed with a grin. "Your video has over 1 million views already." "Video?" Noah grabbed the remote and turned up the volume on the television. Sure enough, the local morning show was playing footage from the night before. Shaky, but clear enough to show the mother bear and her limping cub emerging from the forest, pausing at the tree line, and the mother bear dipping her head in what appeared to be a deliberate gesture toward Noah before disappearing back into the woods. The caption below read, "Miracle in the mountains. Bear seeks human help, returns to say thanks." "Oh boy," Noah muttered. On screen, the anchor was interviewing Kelly Zhang, the reporter from the previous night. "It was incredible, Tom," she was saying excitedly. "Wildlife experts say they've never seen documented behavior like this before. The bear specifically sought out Mr. Parker's help and then returned after the rescue, seemingly to acknowledge him in front of witnesses." The screen split to show a skeptical-looking man in an office with wildlife credentials displayed behind him. "While fascinating, we should be cautious about anthropomorphizing wild animal behavior," he cautioned. "Bears are intelligent, but attributing human-like reasoning and gratitude to them is scientifically unsound." Kelly Zhang wasn't having it. Multiple witnesses, including experienced forest rangers, confirmed the bear's behavior was deliberate and purposeful, and our exclusive video speaks for itself. The footage played again, this time in slow motion, focusing on the mother bear's head-dipping gesture. Noah had to admit it looked even more deliberate when replayed. A knock at the door interrupted his viewing. Eleanor poked her head in, followed by Ranger Miller. "You're famous," Eleanor announced without preamble, bustling into the room. She carried a large basket of homemade muffins. "The whole county's talking about you and your bear." Miller looked uncomfortable in the hospital setting but nodded a greeting. "How's the ankle?" "Just sprained," Noah replied, muting the television. "What did you find at the ravine?" Miller's expression turned grim. "You were right. That branch was cut and positioned as a deadfall trap. We found 2 more similar setups in the area, all carefully hidden." Eleanor made a disgusted sound. "Poachers! In our woods. I've been saying for years we need more patrols." "We've called in additional rangers and set up camera traps," Miller continued. "But there's something else. We found tracks. Not just bear tracks, but what looks like someone monitoring the traps. Recent tracks, probably from yesterday." "They'll be long gone by now," Noah said. "They must have heard all the commotion last night." Miller shook his head. "Don't be so sure. Poachers get greedy, and there's a pattern to these traps that suggests they're targeting a specific bear path, possibly a route to a feeding ground or water source." Noah's mother bear and her cub, Noah realized aloud. "They're specifically after them?" "Hard to say," Miller replied, "but the traps were definitely set to catch bears rather than deer or other game." Eleanor sat on the edge of Noah's bed. "I've called an emergency meeting of the community council for tomorrow evening. This affects all of us. These woods are our home, too." Noah was touched by her concern, though not surprised. Despite her gruff exterior, Eleanor was fiercely protective of both the human and wildlife communities. She'd moved to these mountains 40 years earlier as a young widow and had become something of an unofficial mayor of their small, scattered community. "Meanwhile," she continued, "you've got journalists and wildlife people climbing over each other to talk to you. That Dr. Brennan was at my place at dawn, asking 1 million questions about the bears in our area." She seems genuinely interested in understanding what happened, Noah said. Miller checked his watch. I should get back. We're organizing search teams to look for more traps. He hesitated, then added, just so you know, the department's official position is that you got lucky last night. They're calling it unusual but not unprecedented bear behavior, but off the record. He lowered his voice. I know what I saw. That bear came back for a reason. After Miller left, Eleanor helped Noah sort through his messages. Most were from media outlets requesting interviews, but there were also notes from wildlife organizations, a few university researchers, and even a Hollywood producer interested in life rights for a potential film. This is ridiculous, Noah muttered, setting aside the film inquiry. I just helped a bear cub. Anyone would have done the same. Eleanor fixed him with a stern look. Would they? Most folks around here grab a gun when they see a bear near their property. Her expression softened. Claire would be proud of you, you know. She always said you had a way with wild things. The mention of his late wife brought a lump to Noah's throat. She's the one who would have known what to do. She was the wildlife educator. And clearly she taught you well. Eleanor patted his hand. Now, what do you want me to tell all these people clamoring for a piece of you? Noah thought for a moment. Tell Dr. Brennan. I'll talk with her, and maybe that Kelly Zhang who was there last night. But that's it for now. What I really want is to get back to my cabin and make sure those bears are safe. Doctor, Patel says you're being discharged this afternoon, as long as you promise to use your crutches. Eleanor stood and straightened her jacket. I'll drive you home and stay with you tonight. No arguments, she added when Noah opened his mouth to protest. You can't manage alone with that ankle, and those woods aren't safe with poachers about. After Eleanor left, Noah turned the television back on, flipping through channels. To his amazement, the story had made national news. A major network was showing the same footage, with a panel of experts debating whether animals could demonstrate gratitude, or if this was merely instinctive behavior being misinterpreted by emotional humans. One panelist, a renowned animal behaviorist, made a point that resonated with Noah. We're only beginning to understand the emotional and cognitive capabilities of many species. Dismissing this incident outright would be as unscientific as claiming definitively that the bear was expressing human-like gratitude. What we need is more observation and fewer assumptions. A new knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Brennan entered, looking slightly harried but excited. I hope I'm not intruding, she said. Eleanor mentioned you'd be willing to speak with me. That was fast, Noah remarked. News travels quickly around here. Small communities, Dr. Brennan said with a smile, taking the visitor's chair. I grew up in one myself. May I record our conversation, for research purposes only? Noah nodded, and Dr. Brennan placed a small digital recorder on the bedside table. For the next hour, she guided him through a detailed recounting of the previous night's events, asking thoughtful questions about the bear's behavior, vocalizations, and body language. Her expertise helped Noah articulate subtle details he might otherwise have overlooked. The specific pitch of the mother bear's distress calls, the way she maintained a consistent distance while leading him through the forest, her apparent understanding that the rangers posed a potential threat. This is extraordinary, Doctor, Brennan said when they finished. In my professional opinion, this mother bear demonstrated problem-solving abilities and interspecies communication skills far beyond what's been documented in black bears. You believe me then? Noah asked. That she deliberately sought human help? The evidence supports your interpretation, she confirmed. But more importantly, she switched off her recorder, Off the record, I've been tracking this particular mother bear for nearly 3 years. We call her F237, but the local indigenous communities named her Makwa, which simply means bear in Anishinaabemowin, the Ojibwe language. She's unusually intelligent even for a bear, and she's had previous positive interactions with humans. What kind of interactions? 2 years ago, a fire swept through part of the forest. Most wildlife fled, but Makwa was observed watching firefighters create a firebreak near her territory. After the fire was contained, she was spotted multiple times at the edge of the burn zone, observing the recovery efforts. And last year, when we were conducting a research study that involved setting up honey-baited camera traps, she figured out how to trigger the cameras without disturbing the bait. She learned from watching humans, Noah realized. Exactly. We've suspected for years that certain individual bears might have higher cognitive abilities and adaptability, particularly regarding human interaction. Makwa may be an exceptional case, a bear who's learned that humans can be allies rather than threats, at least in certain situations. The implications were fascinating. So, when her cub was trapped, she recalled positive human interactions and made a logical decision to seek help, Dr. Brennan finished. It's still extraordinary, but perhaps not as mysterious as it first appeared. A nurse entered to check Noah's vital signs, informing him that discharge paperwork was being prepared. Dr. Brennan gathered her notes. "I should let you rest," she said. "But I'd like to continue our conversation. Perhaps once you're settled at home?" "I'd like that," Noah replied. "And I want to help find these poachers before they hurt Makwa or her cub." Dr. Brennan's expression grew serious. "That's my primary concern as well. Bears are creatures of habit. They use the same trails, the same feeding grounds. If poachers have identified Makwa's patterns, then she's still in danger," Noah finished grimly. "We need to find these people." As Dr. Brennan turned to leave, something on the television caught Noah's attention. A breaking news banner announcing a new development in the Miracle Bear story. He quickly unmuted the volume. "Exclusive report," a grim-faced anchor was saying. "Wildlife authorities have discovered what appears to be an organized poaching operation targeting bears in Whispering Pines Forest. Multiple illegal traps have been found, and authorities are asking the public to report any suspicious activity." In a disturbing development, officials confirm they've received threats against Noah Parker, the local man who rescued a bear cub last night after being led to it by the mother bear. Noah and Dr. Brennan exchanged alarmed looks. "Threats?" Noah echoed. "Against me?" Dr. Brennan moved quickly to the door. "I need to make some calls. Stay here until Eleanor comes for you and don't speak to anyone you don't know." Her voice had taken on a new urgency. "These poaching operations can involve dangerous people, Noah. If they believe you've interfered with their business..." The implications hung in the air between them. What had begun as an extraordinary encounter with nature had suddenly become something much darker and potentially dangerous. The poachers now had a face and a name to blame for their exposed operation. His. After Dr. Brennan left, Noah stared at the television, where his own face now appeared alongside the footage of the mother bear. The miracle story had taken an ominous turn, and he couldn't shake the feeling that by saving one bear cub, he had unwittingly stepped into something much bigger and more dangerous than he could have imagined. Outside his window, the forested mountains rolled into the distance, beautiful and serene from this vantage point. Somewhere in those woods, Makwa and her cub were trying to survive, and so were the people determined to harm them for profit. The knowledge settled in Noah's chest like a cold stone. This wasn't over. It had barely begun. By mid-afternoon, Noah was settled in Eleanor's ancient pickup truck, his crutches awkwardly arranged in the truck bed, heading back to his cabin. The hospital discharge had become complicated when reporters gathered in the parking lot, necessitating a diversion created by Dr. Brennan and a backdoor exit coordinated by sympathetic hospital staff. "You'd think you were a movie star," Eleanor commented, navigating the winding mountain road with practiced ease. Her gnarled hands gripped the steering wheel confidently despite her age. 3 news vans followed us for a while before I lost them on that logging road turnoff. "This is insane," Noah muttered, shifting uncomfortably as his ankle throbbed. The painkillers were wearing off, but the discomfort was nothing compared to his unease about the situation. "I just helped a bear cub. Now I've got reporters hounding me and poachers threatening me." Eleanor shot him a sideways glance. "You did more than help a bear cub, Noah Parker. You showed the world that something most people think is impossible might be possible after all. That changes things, makes people uncomfortable." "Or too comfortable," Noah replied. "Did you see those social media posts Dr. Brennan showed me? People talking about going into the woods to make friends with wild bears now. Someone's going to get hurt." "Fools will be fools," Eleanor said dismissively. "Can't stop that. But you did a good thing, and now you've stirred up a hornet's nest, both good and bad." As they rounded the final curve before Noah's driveway, Eleanor suddenly braked hard. "What in heaven's name?" Noah looked up to see his modest cabin surrounded by vehicles. 2 Ranger trucks, Dr. Brennan's Department of Fish and Wildlife SUV, and what appeared to be an unmarked police car. Several people moved about his property, and yellow caution tape cordoned off a section of his porch. "What's happening?" Noah asked as Eleanor cautiously continued driving toward the cabin. They were met by Ranger Miller, who approached the truck with a grim expression. Eleanor rolled down her window. "What's all this?" she demanded before Miller could speak. "Someone broke into Noah's cabin," Miller explained, his voice low, "sometime early this morning while everyone was at the hospital." Noah felt a chill run through him. "Broke in? Was anything taken?" Miller's expression darkened further. "It wasn't a robbery, Noah. It was a message." He glanced at Eleanor. "Maybe you should get him inside first. Sheriff Delgado wants to speak with him." With Miller's help, Noah managed to navigate his crutches to the porch. The scene inside his cabin made his stomach turn. His living room had been ransacked. Furniture overturned, books pulled from shelves. But what drew his eye immediately was the wall above his fireplace. Written in what looked horribly like blood were the words, "Bears before people? You chose wrong." "Is that—" Noah couldn't finish the question. "Animal blood," confirmed a stocky, silver-haired man in a sheriff's uniform who introduced himself as Sheriff Delgado. "Probably deer, according to our preliminary assessment." Dr. Brennan stood near the window, her face tight with anger. "This is an escalation. Poachers don't typically confront humans this directly, unless they're desperate or organized crime is involved." "Organized crime?" Eleanor echoed incredulously. "Here?" Sheriff Delgado nodded grimly. "Wildlife trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar criminal enterprise, ma'am. 3rd largest illegal trade in the world, after drugs and weapons. Most people don't realize it because it happens in remote areas like ours." Noah sank into the one upright chair remaining, the reality of the situation hitting him fully. "They're sending a warning." "Yes," Delgado agreed, "and we're taking it seriously. I've assigned a deputy to patrol this area, and I've contacted the regional FBI office. They have a wildlife trafficking task force." "FBI?" Noah felt increasingly overwhelmed. Isn't that overkill? Dr. Brennan approached, her notebook in hand. Noah, we've identified at least 12 illegal traps in a 3-mile radius of where you found the cub. This isn't opportunistic poaching. It's a systematic operation, and based on the specific targeting of bears, particularly the sophisticated methods used to avoid detection by our regular patrols. We believe we're dealing with an organized ring that specifically targets bears for their gallbladders and paws. Sheriff Delgado picked up the explanation. We've been tracking increased black market activity in traditional medicines containing bear parts moving through cities on the West Coast. The timing aligns with when these sophisticated traps started appearing. The implications were disturbing. Noah looked around his violated home, then back to the sheriff. So, what happens now? Now, Delgado said firmly, we recommend you stay somewhere else until we catch these people. Eleanor immediately stood taller. He'll stay with me. My place has a clear view of the approach road, and I've got my husband's old shotgun. Eleanor. Noah began to protest. Don't Eleanor me, she cut him off. This isn't negotiable. These people know where you live, and they've already shown they can get in. Next time, they might do worse than paint your walls with deer blood. Sheriff Delgado nodded approval. That's a good temporary solution. We'll increase patrols past both properties. In the meantime, Mr. Parker, we'll need a formal statement, and I'd like permission to set up surveillance cameras around your property. As Noah agreed, Dr. Brennan's phone rang. She stepped outside to take the call, returning moments later with an expression Noah couldn't quite read, a mixture of excitement and concern. That was my research team, she announced. They've located Makwa and her cub. They've moved to a different part of the forest, away from where the traps were found. The cub is limping, but mobile. Relief flooded through Noah. They're okay. For now, Doctor. Brennan qualified. But they're moving into an area where we've had reports of another adult female bear with cubs. There could be territorial conflicts. As the various officials continued their work, deputies photographing the damage, rangers coordinating with wildlife officers, the sheriff taking Noah's statement, Noah felt increasingly helpless. His ankle confined him to a chair while events spiraled beyond his control. The simple act of helping a bear cub had unleashed something much larger and more dangerous than he could have anticipated. When they finally departed for Eleanor's house an hour later, Noah took one last look at his cabin. The place that had been his sanctuary now felt violated, tainted by human cruelty. The contrast between the malice of the poachers and the trust shown by Makwa couldn't have been starker. One had sought his help to preserve life. The others threatened him for interfering with their profits. We'll clean it up tomorrow, Eleanor promised, seeing his expression. Some bleach and paint will take care of that mess. But Noah knew it wasn't just the physical damage that needed repair. Something fundamental had shifted. The forest he loved, that he'd thought of as a peaceful refuge, now felt like contested territory, a battlefield where humans fought over the right to exploit or protect its inhabitants. This isn't just about Makwa and her cub anymore, is it? He asked quietly as Eleanor drove. Eleanor's weathered face was set in determined lines. It never was, son. You just happened to stumble into something bigger than yourself. But that's how most important things happen in life. Not because we go looking for fights, but because sometimes the fights find us. Her words stayed with Noah as they arrived at her small, immaculately kept house on the other side of the community. Unlike his remote cabin, Eleanor's place sat on a rise overlooking the main road, with clear sight lines in all directions. A large veranda wrapped around 3 sides, offering multiple vantage points. My Jackson built this place with security in mind, Eleanor explained as she helped Noah navigate the front steps. He was a police officer before we moved up here. Always said a house should have no blind approaches. Inside, the home was a comfortable mixture of practical rustic furniture and surprisingly delicate antiques. Photographs covered one wall. Eleanor in her youth, looking remarkably like Lauren Bacall, her late husband Jackson in police uniform, children and grandchildren at various ages. "Spare rooms down the hall," Eleanor directed. "I've already put fresh sheets on the bed. You settle in while I make dinner." Too exhausted to argue, Noah did as instructed. The spare room was small but comfortable, with a handmade quilt on the bed and a window overlooking the dense forest that bordered Eleanor's property. In the late afternoon light, the trees looked peaceful, showing no sign of the drama unfolding within their shadows. Noah sank onto the bed, overwhelmed by pain, fatigue, and the day's revelations. He must have dozed off because the next thing he knew, Eleanor was gently shaking his shoulder. "Dinner's ready," she said. "And you have visitors." Struggling to his feet and grabbing his crutches, Noah followed Eleanor to the dining room, surprised to find Dr. Brennan and a man he didn't recognize seated at the table. The stranger rose as Noah entered. A tall, broad-shouldered Native American man, perhaps in his 50s, with long salt and pepper hair tied back in a neat ponytail. "Noah, this is Joseph Blackfeather," Dr. Brennan introduced them. "He's an Ojibwe elder and a consultant with our wildlife department. He specifically asked to meet you after hearing about what happened with Makwa." Joseph extended a hand, his grip firm. "Thank you for helping Makwa and her cub," he said, his voice deep and measured. "Not many would have understood what she was asking." Noah felt slightly disoriented by the formal gratitude. "I just did what seemed right at the time." "Which is rarer than you might think," Joseph replied with a slight smile. "Please, sit. Your leg needs rest." As they settled around Eleanor's dining table, laden with a hearty stew and fresh bread, Noah noticed Joseph studying him with thoughtful eyes. "Joseph's family has lived in these mountains for generations," Dr. Brennan explained. "His knowledge of local wildlife, especially bears, has been invaluable to our research." "My grandmother was what people now call a bear whisperer," Joseph said, accepting a bowl of stew from Eleanor. "She understood their language, their ways. She taught me to listen when they speak." Under other circumstances, Noah might have dismissed such talk as mystical exaggeration. But after his experience with Makwa, he found himself leaning forward, genuinely curious. "What do you mean by their language?" Joseph considered before answering. "Bears communicate through body posture, vocalizations, scent markers. Most humans miss these signals or misinterpret them as aggression when they're often warnings or requests for space. My grandmother could read these signs like you read words on a page. That's what we're documenting scientifically now," Dr. Brennan added. "The sophisticated communication systems of bears that were traditionally understood by indigenous cultures but dismissed by Western science until recently." Joseph nodded. "Makwa is special, even among bears. Our stories speak of certain animals who serve as messengers between worlds, the animal world and the human world. They're called border crossers in our tradition. Makwa has always shown unusual interest in human activities, observing rather than avoiding." "I've tracked her for 3 years," Dr. Brennan confirmed. "She's displayed problem-solving abilities well beyond typical bear behavior. And now, seeking human assistance deliberately, it confirms what Joseph's community has been telling us." Noah absorbed this information as he ate, finding unexpected comfort in the idea that his experience had validation in both traditional knowledge and emerging science. "So, when she came to my cabin. She chose you specifically, Joseph said with certainty. Bears have excellent memory and facial recognition. She may have observed you before, assessed you as non-threatening. When her cub was in danger, she remembered. The conversation continued through dinner, with Joseph sharing stories of bear-human interactions passed down through generations in his community, and Dr. Brennan adding scientific context. Despite the disturbing events of the day, Noah found himself fascinated. There was something profoundly comforting in discovering that his connection with Makwa wasn't entirely unprecedented or inexplicable. As they finished eating, however, Dr. Brennan's expression grew serious. "We didn't come just to share bear stories, Noah. Joseph has information about the poachers." Joseph set down his coffee cup. "There's a man named Victor Zhao. He appeared in our community about 8 months ago, claiming to be a traditional medicine practitioner from Vancouver. He began asking questions about local bears, their habits, locations. Several community members became suspicious when he offered money for information. We've been tracking Zhao for over a year," Dr. Brennan added. He's suspected of running a wildlife trafficking network that spans from Canada to California, specializing in bear parts for traditional Asian medicine markets. Most legitimate traditional practitioners denounce the use of endangered animal parts, Joseph clarified. But there's still a black market, and the prices are astronomical. "How is this connected to what happened at my cabin?" Noah asked. Dr. Brennan and Joseph exchanged glances. "Your viral video exposed their operation in these woods," Dr. Brennan explained. "The poachers were operating completely undetected until now. Suddenly, there are rangers combing the forest for traps, media attention on the area, and a spotlight on local bears. You cost them money and security," Joseph said bluntly. "That makes you a target." The reality of the situation settled heavily on Noah. "So, what happens now?" "The FBI's Wildlife Trafficking Unit is sending agents," Dr. Brennan replied. "They'll be here tomorrow. Local law enforcement is increasing patrols, and our department is conducting round-the-clock monitoring of known bear territories." "And in the meantime," Eleanor interjected from where she'd been listening quietly, "you stay here where it's safe." But even as she spoke, a sudden, sharp crack echoed from outside. The unmistakable sound of a gunshot, followed immediately by another. Joseph was on his feet instantly, moving to the window with surprising speed. "That came from the forest edge," he said, peering into the gathering darkness. "Maybe a quarter-mile in?" Dr. Brennan was already dialing her phone. "I'm calling the Rangers. They have a patrol in that sector." Noah struggled to his feet, grabbing his crutches. A terrible certainty filled him. "It's Makwa," he said, his voice hollow. "They're going after her now before the increased security makes it impossible." "You can't know that," Eleanor protested. "I do know it," Noah insisted. "The same way I knew to follow her yesterday. She's in danger." Joseph gave him a long, assessing look, then nodded slightly. "I believe you." He turned to Dr. Brennan. "Tell the Rangers to search the eastern ridge near the old lightning-struck pine. That's where Makwa was headed with her cub according to your tracking team's last report." As Dr. Brennan relayed the information, another shot rang out, more distant this time. Noah felt physically ill, trapped in Eleanor's dining room, while Makwa, the bear who had trusted him, who had shown such extraordinary intelligence and trust, might be fighting for her life. "I need to go out there," he said, already moving toward the door despite his crutches. "Don't be ridiculous," Eleanor blocked his path. "You can barely walk." "I agree with Eleanor," Dr. Brennan said, hanging up her phone. "Rangers are converging on the area now, along with sheriff's deputies. they'll find the poachers. But will they be in time for Makwa? Noah demanded. Joseph had been silent, his expression distant as if listening to something only he could hear. Now he spoke quietly but with authority. Noah should come. What? Eleanor and Dr. Brennan exclaimed in unison. Not to join the search, Joseph clarified, but to be present. There is a connection between him and Makwa that might be important. That's not scientifically, Dr. Brennan began, then stopped herself. Actually, we don't know that. Bears do recognize individual humans. If Makwa is injured but mobile, she might respond to Noah's presence in a way that could help us locate her. This is insane, Eleanor protested. You can't take an injured man out bear hunting in the dark. Not hunting, Joseph corrected gently. Finding. There's a difference. He turned to Noah. It should be your choice. Noah didn't hesitate. I'm going. The next 20 minutes were a flurry of activity. Dr. Brennan called her team to coordinate with the rangers while Joseph helped Noah into his coat. Eleanor, realizing she couldn't stop them, insisted on packing a bag with first aid supplies, water, and extra flashlights. This is the most foolhardy thing I've ever witnessed, she muttered as she worked, chasing after armed poachers in the dark while barely able to walk. We won't be chasing anyone, Dr. Brennan assured her, checking her own equipment. We'll coordinate with law enforcement from a safe distance. This is about finding Makwa if she's injured, not confronting criminals. Joseph had been mostly silent, gathering a few items from his own vehicle. Now he returned with something that made Noah raise his eyebrows, a traditional drum, small enough to be carried easily with a strap. My grandmother's, he explained simply. Bears know this sound. By the time they left in Dr. Brennan's SUV, the forest was completely dark. Joseph directed them to a service road that penetrated deeper into the woods than the main routes, leading them toward the area where the shots had been heard. Noah sat in the back seat, his injured leg awkwardly extended, gripping the door handle as the vehicle bounced over the rough track. Rangers report finding blood on the eastern trail, Dr. Brennan announced grimly as they drove, checking her radio. But no bear, dead or alive. She's wounded but moving, Joseph said with quiet certainty. How can you know that? Dr. Brennan asked, not challenging but curious. Joseph smiled slightly in the darkness. The same way Noah knew to follow her yesterday. Some things are felt rather than known. They drove for almost 20 minutes, the headlights illuminating a narrow tunnel through the dense forest. Occasionally, the radio crackled with updates from ranger teams searching the area, but there was no definitive sighting of either poachers or injured bears. Finally, Joseph indicated they should stop. This is close enough. Any closer, and we might drive her further away. They parked in a small clearing, the SUV's headlights providing a pool of light in the otherwise complete darkness. Noah awkwardly maneuvered out of the vehicle with his crutches, the forest floor making his progress even more difficult than usual. What now? Dr. Brennan asked, scanning the darkness with her powerful flashlight. Joseph removed his drum and stepped a few paces into the trees. Now we call her. He began a soft, rhythmic drumming, the sound resonating through the quiet forest in a pattern that seemed to mimic a heartbeat. Noah stood beside Dr. Brennan, feeling both foolish and strangely certain at the same time. The idea of summoning a wounded wild bear in the darkness should have seemed absurd, yet something deeper than logical thought told him this was right. After several minutes of drumming, Joseph paused. Noah, he said quietly, call to her. Use your voice. She knows you. What should I say? Noah asked, feeling self-conscious. It doesn't matter, She'll recognize your voice, not your words." Feeling slightly ridiculous but committed now, Noah took a deep breath. "Makwa," he called, his voice sounding small in the vast darkness. "It's Noah. We're here to help you." Joseph resumed his gentle drumming. Dr. Brennan stood silently, her scientific skepticism visibly warring with her respect for Joseph's traditional knowledge. The forest remained quiet except for the rhythmic drum and the occasional distant call of ranger teams on their radios. Noah called again, louder this time. "Makwa, we can help you." Minutes stretched by with no response. Noah was beginning to think this had indeed been a foolish errand when a subtle change in the atmosphere made him tense. Joseph stopped drumming abruptly, his head tilted in an attitude of intense listening. "There," he whispered, pointing into the darkness to their right. Dr. Brennan swung her flashlight in that direction, the beam cutting through the trees to reveal nothing but forest undergrowth. "I don't see—" A low, pained moan interrupted her, a sound Noah recognized instantly. It was the same distress call he'd heard at his cabin, but weaker now, threaded with pain. "She's there," Noah said, already moving forward on his crutches as quickly as the uneven ground would allow. "Makwa." "Noah, wait!" Dr. Brennan hissed, hurrying after him. "We don't know her condition. A wounded bear can be dangerous even if she recognizes you." But Noah was already pushing through the undergrowth, driven by an urgency he couldn't explain. Joseph followed close behind, with Dr. Brennan reluctantly bringing up the rear, her flashlight beam bouncing wildly as she moved. They found Makwa 50 yards into the trees, collapsed on her side in a small clearing. Even in the flashlight's limited illumination, they could see the dark stain of blood matting the fur on her right shoulder. She raised her head weakly as they approached, a warning rumble in her throat that faded when she seemed to recognize Noah. What struck Noah most was her eyes, the same intelligent gaze that had met his at his cabin, but now clouded with pain and fear. Beside her, the cub pressed close, uninjured but clearly distressed by its mother's condition. "She's been shot," Dr. Brennan confirmed, keeping a cautious distance. "Shoulder wound. Not immediately fatal, but she's losing blood." She was already on her radio, calling for the nearest ranger team and the wildlife veterinarian who was on standby. Noah moved closer, ignoring Dr. Brennan's warning hiss. Dropping one crutch, he sank to his knees a few feet from Makwa's head. "We're going to help you," he told her softly, "like you asked me to help your cub." The bear's eyes remained fixed on him, her breathing labored. The cub whimpered, torn between fear of the humans and concern for its mother. Joseph knelt beside Noah, speaking in a language Noah didn't understand. Words that sounded ancient and reverent. Then, in English, he said, "Help is coming, Mother Bear. Your cub will be safe." As if understanding, Makwa's tense body relaxed slightly. She kept her gaze on Noah, a connection that transcended species. Dr. Brennan approached cautiously, her scientific training warring visibly with what she was witnessing. "The nearest team is 10 minutes out," she reported, "with tranquilizers and medical supplies." "She might not have 10 minutes, Noah said, noting the growing blood pool beneath Makwa's massive body. Joseph was already opening the medical kit Eleanor had packed. "We need to slow the bleeding until help arrives." "You can't be serious," Dr. Brennan protested. "That's a wounded wild bear." "Who came to Noah for help once before," Joseph reminded her calmly, "and has now been found by him again. This is not coincidence." Before Dr. Brennan could object further, Noah had removed his jacket and was cautiously reaching toward Makwa with it. "It's okay," he murmured. "I'm going to try to stop the bleeding." To Dr. Brennan's evident amazement, Makwa remained still as Noah gently pressed his wadded jacket against her wound. The bear flinched at the pressure but didn't growl or snap. Instead, she made a soft chuffing noise, the same sound Noah had heard her make to calm her cub the previous night. "Extraordinary," Dr. Brennan whispered, her scientific skepticism momentarily overcome by what she was witnessing. "She's allowing medical intervention." Joseph nodded, unsurprised. "Border crossers," he said simply. "They understand more than most humans credit." They worked together for the next several minutes, Noah maintaining pressure on the wound, Joseph monitoring Makwa's breathing, and Dr. Brennan alternating between updating the approaching rangers and documenting the unprecedented scene with her camera. The cub gradually became bolder, approaching Noah cautiously before retreating to nuzzle its mother's face. Its injured leg from the previous day's trap was clearly still painful, but the young bear moved with determination, seemingly more concerned about its mother than its own discomfort. "The poachers might still be nearby," Dr. Brennan whispered, scanning the surrounding darkness. "They wouldn't abandon a wounded target if they could help it." As if triggered by her words, a twig snapped in the darkness beyond their small circle of light. Joseph's head jerked up, his body tensing. "Someone's there," he whispered. Noah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. Unarmed and vulnerable, they had placed themselves in the perfect position to be found by either rangers or poachers, and the rangers would have announced themselves. Dr. Brennan quietly reached for her radio, but before she could speak into it, a voice came from the darkness. "Step away from the bear." The words were accented, the tone coldly professional. "This is not your concern." A flashlight beam cut through the trees, deliberately aimed to blind them while keeping the speaker in shadow. Noah shielded his eyes with one hand, the other still maintaining pressure on Makwa's wound. "This bear is protected under federal law," Dr. Brennan called out, her voice remarkably steady. "Wildlife rangers are already en route. You need to leave now." A harsh laugh answered her. "And who will tell them who was here? Dead conservationists tell no tales." The casual threat made Noah's blood run cold. Beside him, Makwa stirred restlessly, sensing the new danger despite her weakened state. The cub pressed closer to its mother, whimpering softly. "You misunderstand your situation," came the voice again. "You three are alone in the dark woods with a wounded animal and armed men. The rangers are searching the eastern ridge. We heard their radios. No one will find you in time." Noah exchanged glances with Joseph, whose expression remained calm despite the threat. Dr. Brennan had positioned herself between the voice and Makwa, her hand now visibly resting on what Noah realized must be a concealed sidearm beneath her jacket. "It seems we're at an impasse," Dr. Brennan replied, her voice level, "because we're not leaving this bear." "Then you die with it," the voice replied simply. The flashlight beam wavered slightly as its holder presumably adjusted their position. What happened next unfolded so quickly that Noah could barely process it. From the darkness behind them came a thunderous roar, not from Makwa, who was too weak to manage more than a faint growl, but from something larger. The undergrowth crashed and splintered as an enormous form burst into their small clearing. Another bear, this one a massive male at least twice Makwa's size. The newcomer reared to its full height, easily 7 feet tall on its hind legs, and roared again. The sound reverberated through the forest, a primal declaration of rage and territory that made Noah's chest vibrate with its intensity. The poacher's flashlight beam swung wildly toward the new threat, illuminating the magnificent animal for a brief moment before falling to the ground, abandoned as its owner presumably fled. Noah, Joseph, and Dr. Brennan remained frozen in place, now caught between a wounded mother bear they were trying to save and an adult male bear in a state of agitation. Male bears were known to kill cubs and sometimes females who resisted. This could be a second deadly threat rather than salvation. But the massive male ignored them completely. Instead, it dropped to all fours and approached Makwa, sniffing carefully at her wound. The cub retreated behind its mother, clearly terrified of the newcomer. "Don't move," Joseph whispered, though the instruction was hardly necessary. None of them dared breathe as the male bear investigated the fallen female. To Noah's astonishment, the male made a soft grunting sound that seemed almost gentle. He carefully sniffed around Makwa's head and then, most surprisingly, delicately touched noses with her in what appeared to be recognition. "It's her mate," Dr. Brennan whispered in wonder. "Black bears rarely form lasting pairs, but our tracking data suggested Makwa might have a consistent male companion. We've never confirmed it visually until now." The male bear turned his attention to the humans, seeming to notice them for the first time. Noah felt a renewed spike of terror as the massive creature approached them, its movements deliberate and powerful. But instead of showing aggression, the bear simply sniffed the air near them, focusing particularly on Noah's hands still pressed against Makwa's wound. "He recognizes you're helping," Joseph murmured, his voice filled with wonder. "This is unprecedented." The male bear returned to Makwa's side, positioning himself protectively between her and the direction from which the poacher's voice had come. His message was unmistakable. A new guardian had arrived, one far more formidable than 3 humans in the dark. In the distance, they could finally hear the approaching rangers, voices calling back and forth, the crackle of radios, the sound of multiple people moving through the forest. The male bear's head lifted at these new sounds, his posture tensing. "He'll run when they get closer," Dr. Brennan predicted softly. "Wild bears almost always retreat from groups of humans." But the male stood his ground, even as flashlight beams began to penetrate the trees around them. Joseph began to drum again, softly, a different rhythm than before, slower, almost like a lullaby. "A calming song," he explained, when Noah glanced at him questioningly, "to let him know these new humans also come to help." Whether it was the drumming or some other understanding, the male bear remained beside Makwa as the first rangers entered the clearing, though his massive body visibly tensed. The rangers halted abruptly at the sight before them. 3 humans kneeling beside a wounded female bear, her cub huddled nearby, and an enormous male bear standing guard over the scene. "Nobody move," ordered the lead ranger, his tranquilizer gun half raised. "Don't shoot," Noah called out. "He's not threatening us. He's protecting her." The standoff lasted only moments before the wildlife veterinarian pushed through the group, her medical kit in hand. She assessed the situation with remarkable composure. "I need to treat that female immediately," she said calmly. "Can someone explain why that male isn't attacking any of you?" Dr. Brennan found her voice first. "We think it's her mate. He arrived just as poachers were threatening us, and he's been allowing us to help her." The veterinarian nodded, as if such situations were commonplace in her line of work. "I'll need to tranquilize them both to safely treat her. The wound looks serious." The poachers, Noah remembered suddenly. They were just here, armed. The ranger captain immediately organized several of his team to pursue the fleeing criminals, while others established a perimeter around the clearing. The veterinarian prepared her tranquilizer gun with practiced efficiency. "This will be tricky," she warned. "If the male feels threatened when I approach, he might charge. Everyone be ready to move quickly." But when she cautiously approached with the tranquilizer gun, the male bear did something that left everyone in the clearing speechless. He looked directly at Noah, then at Makwa's wound where Noah's hands still maintained pressure, then back at the approaching veterinarian. After what seemed like a moment of deliberation, the massive animal slowly backed away several steps, creating space between himself and Makwa. "He's allowing the treatment," the veterinarian said, disbelief evident in her voice. "Border crosser," Joseph said again, this time loud enough for everyone to hear. Both of them. The next half hour unfolded like a dream. The veterinarian tranquilized both Makwa and her mate with careful precision. The cub was gently captured and sedated as well to prevent it from fleeing in panic. As the bears succumbed to the sedative, the medical team moved in to treat Makwa's gunshot wound. The bullet passed through the muscle of her shoulder, the veterinarian reported as she worked. Missed major arteries and bones. She's lost blood, but should recover with proper care. Noah finally relinquished his place beside Makwa, his hands stiff and bloodied from maintaining pressure on her wound. As he awkwardly maneuvered back to his feet with his crutches, he felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. The adrenaline that had sustained him through the ordeal was fading, leaving behind pain and fatigue. "You probably saved her life," Dr. Brennan told him quietly as they watched the wildlife team prepare the bears for transport to a rehabilitation facility. "The pressure you maintained on that wound prevented her from bleeding out before help arrived." "It wasn't just me," Noah said, glancing at Joseph, who stood nearby, his drum once again hanging from his shoulder. "And I think her mate deserves most of the credit." He drove off the poachers. Joseph smiled slightly. Bears understand family, and sometimes family extends beyond species. In the commotion of the rescue operation, with rangers coordinating the bears' transportation and others still searching for the fled poachers, Noah found himself standing at the edge of the clearing. The night's events felt surreal. Wounded bears allowing human intervention, a male bear appearing at the crucial moment to drive off armed poachers, and the strange, inexplicable connection he felt to these wild creatures. Dr. Brennan approached, her expression thoughtful. "I've studied bears for nearly a decade, and nothing in my scientific training prepared me for what I witnessed tonight. These bears didn't just tolerate human intervention, they sought it out, recognized it as help, and cooperated with it. Maybe science doesn't have all the answers yet," Noah suggested gently. "Maybe not," she agreed, watching as the wildlife team carefully loaded the sedated bears into specialized transport cages. "Or maybe we've been asking the wrong questions all along. Instead of asking how animals differ from us, perhaps we should be studying the ways we're connected." As Noah prepared to leave with the others, a ranger approached with news. "We've apprehended 2 suspects fleeing the area," he reported. "Asian males with hunting rifles and processing equipment. Found a vehicle nearby with bear gallbladders already harvested. They're not talking yet, but we believe they're part of the trafficking ring Dr. Brennan mentioned." "What about their leader?" Joseph asked. "The man who threatened us." "Still at large," the ranger admitted. "But we have his associates, his equipment, and evidence of his operation. It's a start." By the time they returned to Eleanor's house, it was well past midnight. Eleanor was waiting on the porch, a shotgun across her lap, her lined face tight with worry until she saw them emerge from Dr. Brennan's vehicle. "Thank the Lord," she exclaimed, setting aside the weapon to embrace Noah. "When I heard gunshots on the radio, I thought—" She didn't finish the sentence, but her fierce hug said everything. "We found Makwa," Noah told her as they entered the house. "She's injured but alive. The veterinarian thinks she'll recover." Over mugs of strong coffee, they recounted the night's extraordinary events, the confrontation with the poacher, the unexpected arrival of Makwa's mate, and the astonishing behavior of the bears that defied conventional understanding. I always said there was more going on in those woods than most people realize, Eleanor declared, shaking her head in wonder. My grandmother used to tell stories about special bears who understood human speech and sometimes helped lost travelers. I thought they were just tales to keep children from wandering too far. Many traditions have similar stories, Joseph confirmed. Not just among my people, but in cultures worldwide. The bear as guardian, as healer, as bridge between human and natural worlds. And science is finally catching up, Dr. Brennan added. Studies on animal cognition, emotional capacity, and interspecies communication are revealing abilities we never imagined. Before departing for the night, Dr. Brennan promised to keep Noah updated on Makwa's condition. The rehabilitation center has agreed to send daily reports. Once she's stable, they'll prepare all 3 bears for release back into the wild, far from where the poachers were operating. Joseph lingered after Dr. Brennan left, sitting quietly with Noah on Eleanor's porch despite the late hour. The forest stretched before them, a dark, living presence in the night. What you experienced goes beyond a chance encounter, Joseph said finally. In our tradition, when an animal chooses to connect with a human this way, it carries meaning, a responsibility. Noah considered this. What kind of responsibility? To be a voice for those who cannot speak in the human world, to tell their story truthfully, to protect the connection you've been shown. The words resonated with something Noah had been feeling since that first moment at his cabin when Makwa had appeared, calling for help. A doorway had opened between his world and hers, a doorway he hadn't even known existed until he stepped through it.